The family photo albums lay scattered across my new condo floor, their leather covers worn from years of handling. My father's handwritten confession still trembled in my fingertips. Everything we built on your sacrifice is gone, and that's exactly as it should be. Be happy, Ellie. Be free. I stared at the elegant script, feeling the weight of 20 years lift from my shoulders. In one hand, I held my father's letter. In the other, my phone displayed a text from my mother. The house auction is tomorrow. One last chance to save it. Delete. My name is Eleanor Morgan, and at 53 years old, I finally learned to stop saving people who were drowning me. The accusation, ungrateful. The word hit me like a slap across the face 3 weeks earlier. I stood in my corner office at Jefferson Financial, my head pounding with the onset of another migraine. My mother's voice crackled through the phone, sharper than the pain behind my eyes. After everything we've done for you, Eleanor, this is how you repay us? I almost laughed. 20 years of bankrolling their lifestyle flashed through my mind. The vacations to the Hamptons, the country club memberships, the endless investments in my brother Tom's ventures that we all knew would never yield returns. My desk calendar showed the retirement planning seminar I'd skipped last week because Mom had called about their property taxes being overdue. Mom, I can't keep throwing money at Tom's schemes. This cryptocurrency startup of his is just another black hole, and you know it. Your brother has vision, she snapped, her voice carrying that familiar note of disdain she reserved just for me. Unlike you, hiding behind your safe little banking job. He takes risks. He's going places. Yeah, places like the Golden Palace Casino and God knows where else. But I bit my tongue, pressing my fingertips against my temple. The arthritis in my hands, early onset, my doctor had warned, made even this simple gesture painful. I'd learned long ago that defending myself was pointless. The answer is no, I said firmly, glancing at the retirement calculator on my computer screen. At 53, I had less than a quarter of what I should have saved. I'm not investing another cent. The silence on the other end was arctic. I always knew you were jealous of him. I ended the call and slumped into my ergonomic chair, the one I'd splurged on when my back pain became unbearable from sitting at my desk through lunch hours to make up for time spent handling my parents' finances. Outside my window, younger analysts chatted by the coffee machine. I'd been passed over for vice president twice, positions requiring travel I couldn't commit to with my family obligations. My phone buzzed, a text from Tom. Come on, sis. Don't be like that. Just hear me out over dinner. Delete. The visit. That evening, I drove to my parents' colonial-style home in Westchester, the same home I'd saved from foreclosure a decade ago when Dad lost his accounting job. I'd refinanced it in my name, used my first big bonus as a down payment. My car, a sensible sedan with 120,000 miles on it, looked out of place among the luxury vehicles lining their circular driveway. The late afternoon sun streamed through their floor-to-ceiling windows, highlighting dust motes in the air and the fresh flowers my mother insisted on having delivered weekly, on my dime, of course. I ran my hand across their designer kitchen island, the one I'd paid for during their last remodel. Eleanor, wait. My father's voice stopped me as I turned to leave. Richard Morgan stood in the doorway to his study, looking uncomfortable in that way he always did when forced to take sides. At 76, his once commanding frame had diminished, shoulders hunched forward from years of deferring to my mother. The military posture he'd been so proud of when I was a child was long gone. I remembered him differently once, before Mom's spending habits drained their savings, before Tom's business ventures became the family priority, before I became their personal bank. Your mother means well, he said, voice gentle but eyes averted. We just want what's best for the family. The family, I echoed, suddenly feeling every one of my 53 years. Dad, I've been living in the same one-bedroom apartment for 15 years while funding your lifestyle. When was the last time anyone asked what was best for me? He shifted his weight, arthritis in his knee making him wince. I noticed the pill organizer on the counter, heart medication I paid for monthly. You've always been so capable, so independent. Independent because I had to be, capable because no one else in this family was willing to step up. I didn't say it. What was the point? Instead, I kissed his cheek and left, the familiar guilt settling around my shoulders like an old, heavy coat. The discovery. A week later, I was sorting through my mail when I found it, buried between credit card offers and utility bills. A notice from their estate planning lawyer, accidentally sent to my address instead of theirs. My hands trembled as I read it, then read it again. They had transferred everything to Tom. The house I'd helped them keep. The investment accounts I'd advised them on. Everything we'd built together over 20 years, now legally signed over to my younger brother. I sat at my small kitchen table, the space barely accommodating one person, much less the family I'd once imagined having before my caregiving duties took precedence. On the wall hung a calendar showing white sand beaches in Bermuda, a Christmas gift from my parents that had somehow ended up in my apartment. I'd never been there myself. The letter blurred as tears filled my eyes, not from sadness but from something hotter, something that had been building for decades. Rage. I called my best friend Sharon immediately. They wrote me out, I said, my voice hollow, like I never existed. Those manipulative bastards, she breathed. Sharon and I had been friends since college. She'd watched for 20 years as my family drained me dry, had tried to warn me dozens of times. What are you going to do? I opened my laptop, logging into the emergency accounts I'd set up years ago, joint accounts requiring my signature for any major changes. Accounts my parents had forgotten about in their rush to erase me. They think they can just throw me away. My cursor hovered over the access settings. They forgot who's been holding the purse strings all along. I thought about my lost dreams. The director position I'd turned down because it required travel to the London office, and who would handle my parents' finances while I was gone. The apartment I still rented because every spare dollar went to maintaining their lifestyle. The relationship with Rob that had fizzled because I was too busy playing ATM to my family. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Ungrateful. No, I'd been nothing but grateful. Nothing but giving. Nothing but the dutiful daughter for 20 years. And this was my reward. Being discarded the moment I refused to play their game. My phone lit up with another text from Tom. Hey, need to discuss something urgent about the startup. Can you transfer $50K by tomorrow? I looked at the emergency account balance. Nearly $500,000. Money I'd squirreled away just in case over the years. Money they'd never bothered to track or question, too busy spending what I gave them freely. They wanted to play games with money? Fine, let's play. I clicked the button to freeze all transactions, then shut my laptop with a satisfying snap. For the first time in years, I felt something other than resignation or guilt. I felt powerful. Let them scramble. Let them panic. Let them finally understand what it means to lose everything you thought you could count on. The response. It took exactly 6 hours for my phone to explode. First came Tom's texts, evolving from casual to desperate. Hey, trying to access the emergency account. Is there a system problem? Ellie, this is serious. I need that money. Answer your phone. I blocked his number, remembering the private school tuition I'd paid for him, the luxury car I'd co-signed for, the rehab stays I'd financed that he never completed. Tom had always been the golden child, 8 years younger than me, spoiled from birth. Mom called it special treatment. I called it systematic favoritism. Next came my mother's messages, following her predictable pattern. Anger, guilt, manipulation. How dare you freeze those accounts after everything we've done for you? Your father is devastated. Please, sweetheart, we need access. Don't be difficult. At 74, Vivian Morgan was still as manipulative as she'd been in her prime. The former beauty queen had married my father for his stability and prospects, never imagining she'd one day depend on her plain, responsible daughter for her lifestyle maintenance. I recalled her pinched expression at my college graduation dinner when I announced my finance major instead of pursuing modeling like she'd pushed for. You'll never stand out in a man's world, she'd said, sipping her champagne. But I suppose someone has to be practical. I blocked her number too. Sharon arrived at my apartment that evening with wine and takeout. She found me curled up on my second-hand couch staring at my phone's blocked calls list. You look like you need this, she said, pouring a generous glass of red. I just froze $500,000 of my family's safety net, I said, accepting the wine. Should I feel this good about it? Honey, you're not their safety net. You're their ATM, Sharon settled beside me. She divorced 10 years ago, raised 2 children alone, and now managed the local bank. She understood boundaries better than anyone I knew. And they just tried to cut you out completely. What did they expect? My phone buzzed again. My father, this time calling from a different number. I declined the call. I should call Rob, I mused, thinking of my ex. He's a family law attorney. I need to know exactly where I stand legally. The hot lawyer ex who still likes all your LinkedIn posts? Yes, you absolutely should call him. Sharon grinned, then grew serious. But Ellie, you always said you didn't want to be like them. Just make sure your revenge doesn't make you worse. I took a long sip of wine, feeling the ache in my shoulders from years of carrying my family's burdens. They're about to learn what it feels like to live without a safety net. How is that worse than what they did to me? The meeting. The next morning, I met Rob at his favorite coffee shop downtown. He looked good, better than I remembered, in his tailored suit and with his salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed. At 57, Robert Winters had grown more distinguished since our relationship ended 8 years ago. You look well, Ellie, he said, pulling out my chair. I felt suddenly conscious of my sensible bob with its growing strands of gray, the worry lines around my eyes that hadn't been there when we were together. Liar, I said with a small smile. But thank you. His eyes widened when I laid out the situation. Let me get this straight, he said, leaning forward. You've been supporting them entirely since your father's health crisis? Every bonus, every raise, it all went to them? I stirred my coffee absently, watching the cream create patterns in the dark liquid. I remembered my father's heart attack 20 years ago, how the medical bills had decimated their savings, how Tom was still in college and needed tuition. It was supposed to be temporary. I kept thinking if I just gave enough, they'd finally see me, I said quietly. Not as the reliable checkbook, but as their daughter. Oh, Ellie. Rob's voice softened. He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. Our relationship had ended because of my family, or rather, my inability to set boundaries with them. How many dinner dates had I canceled because of their emergencies? Sounds pathetic when I say it out loud. No, it sounds human, he replied. Now, professionally speaking, here's what concerns me. I know the lawyer who handled their asset transfer, Patricia Coleman. She has a reputation. What kind of reputation? The kind that involves previous fraud investigations that mysteriously disappeared. He showed me some news articles on his tablet. And the way this transfer was handled, there are deliberate exemption clauses buried in the paperwork, like they planned this for years. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Years. They've been planning to cut me out for years, all while taking my money? All those times Mom had insisted I'd join them for dinner, only to casually mention Tom's latest business idea. All those calls from Dad about their investment strategies. It hadn't been inclusion, it had been extraction. What's my legal position with the frozen accounts? I asked. Strong. They're joint accounts requiring your signature. You had every right to freeze them. He hesitated. But Ellie, if you really want to hit back, I could do some digging into Patricia Coleman and your brother's new venture. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. My mother using someone else's phone. Your father had to cancel his heart medication refill. Is that what you wanted? To hurt us? I showed Rob the message. They're trying to guilt me. Dad's medication is $15 a month with insurance. They spent more than that on their morning lattes today. People show their true colors when they're desperate, Rob said. I thought about all the times I'd been desperate. Working overtime, skipping vacations, living on ramen to afford their lifestyle. Where was their concern then? Do it, I told Rob. Dig into Patricia Coleman. Dig into Tom's business. Dig into everything. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just remember, revenge is like medicine. The dose makes the poison. I pulled my hand away gently. Then let's make sure the dose is exactly right. The siege, 2 weeks into my financial siege, Tom's attempts to manage the family money were like watching a toddler try to juggle chainsaws. Every day brought a new disaster, and I had front row seats to the show. Your brother bounced another check, Sharon reported over lunch. She worked at the local bank and kept me informed. And your mom tried to use her credit card at Nordstrom, declined. She made quite a scene. I stirred my salad, remembering all the times I'd had to eat microwave dinners so they could maintain their lifestyle. My retirement account notifications mock me daily, warning of insufficient funds for someone my age. Karma's not so fun on the receiving end, is it? My phone lit up with a notification from a real estate app. I nearly choked on my lettuce. They listed the house. I whispered, showing Sharon the listing, for a quick sale, way under market value. The colonial-style home filled my screen. Its pristine lawn, the wraparound porch where I'd spent countless summers reading, the bay window I'd helped restore just last year. My throat tightened. That's the house you saved from foreclosure, right? Sharon asked gently. 10 years ago, I closed the app. Dad was forced into early retirement. They were 3 months behind on payments. I refinanced it in my name, used my first big bonus as a down payment, and now they're selling it without me. Trying to sell it, I corrected. No one's buying that house until the fraud investigation is complete. Rob called that evening while I was making dinner. You need to hear this, he said without preamble. Remember how I was looking into Patricia Coleman and your brother's business? I found something, more like everything. Tom's blockchain startup doesn't exist. It's a shell company, and guess who helped him set it up? Patricia Coleman. I set down my knife. Go on. The company's just moving money around. Large amounts, weird patterns, classic money laundering signs. And get this, some of the transfers trace back to known gambling operations. The pieces clicked. Tom's late-night meetings, the constant need for cash, the desperate texts when I froze the accounts. I remembered the casino chips I'd found in his car once when I'd driven him home from a business dinner. He'd laughed it off as client entertainment. He's in trouble, isn't he? I asked. Real trouble. If by trouble you mean potential criminal charges, yeah. And your parents' lawyer knew exactly what she was doing when she helped him set this up. I heard a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw Tom. Disheveled, unshaven, nothing like his usual polished self. I have to go, I told Rob. My brother's here. Want me to stay on the line? No, I can handle him. I opened the door but kept the chain on. What do you want? Please, Ellie. His eyes were bloodshot. I need help. There are people. I owe them money. Gambling debts. He flinched. At 48, Tom Morgan looked simultaneously younger and older than his age. His boyish face was now lined with stress, but he still carried himself with the entitlement of the perpetually rescued. I remembered bandaging his knees when he fell off his bike at 10, helping him with college applications at 18, co-signing his first apartment lease at 22. When had helping become enabling? How did you? He started. Doesn't matter. What matters is you're not my problem anymore. Mom and Dad made that very clear when they signed everything over to you. They didn't mean, yes, they did. I met his eyes. They meant every signature, every clause, every deliberate move to cut me out while taking my money. And now you're all learning what life is like without your personal banker. These people are dangerous, he whispered. If I don't pay, then I guess you better sell that fancy car. Or maybe that Rolex I bought you for Christmas. I started to close the door. Oh wait, you probably already pawned it. You're my sister. Funny. You all forgot that when you were planning to write me out of the family. I shut the door on his protest and leaned against it, breathing hard. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Your brother is crying in our driveway. Are you proud of yourself? I typed back. Are you proud of raising a son who gambles with dirty money? No response. That night, I drove past my childhood home. The for sale sign looked wrong in the front yard, like a tombstone marking the death of my family's facade. A light was on in the kitchen, and through the window, I could see my parents at the table, heads bent together over papers. They looked older somehow, smaller. For a moment, my finger hovered over my mother's contact. It would be so easy to give in, to be the responsible one again, to fix everything like I always did. I remembered my therapist's words from years ago. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. I drove away, leaving them to their dimly lit kitchen and their mounting bills. Let them learn what it feels like to be abandoned. The confrontation, I followed Tom's silver BMW through downtown, keeping two cars between us. He'd been making these mysterious trips 3 times a week, always claiming they were investor meetings for his blockchain startup, the startup that didn't exist. He pulled into the parking lot of the Golden Palace Casino. Some investor meeting, I muttered, snapping photos with my phone. Through the windshield, I watched him hurry inside, looking over his shoulder like a man who knew he was in trouble. My phone rang. Rob. That background check on Patricia Coleman came back, he said. She's been involved in 3 different money laundering cases, all dismissed under suspicious circumstances. Let me guess, she helped the guilty parties hide their assets? Exactly. And now she's helping your brother do the same thing. I was about to respond when someone knocked on my car window. I jumped. My mother stood there, designer handbag on her arm, face twisted with anger. Following your brother now? She demanded as I reluctantly rolled down the window. What kind of sick game are you playing? The kind where I expose what's really going on, I said. Did you know your golden child is gambling away everything you gave him? He's networking, building business relationships. Her voice had that same dismissive tone she'd used when I was 13 and reported Tom stealing from my piggy bank. He was just borrowing, she'd said then. I gestured at the casino. In there? Wake up, Mom. He's not running a startup. He's running a money laundering scheme with your crooked lawyer. How dare you? She grabbed my car door handle, yanking it open. You've always been jealous of him. Always trying to make him look bad. He doesn't need my help with that. I stepped out of the car, facing her. Despite her 74 years, Vivian Morgan still carried herself with the regal posture of the former beauty queen she was. The rain had started to fall, dampening her carefully styled hair. Tell me something. How long did you plan to cut me out? How many years did you spend taking my money while plotting behind my back? We did what was best for the family. I was family too. My voice cracked. Or was I just the bank account you kept around until you didn't need it anymore? You were never meant to be the star, Eleanor. She smoothed her expensive blouse, one I'd bought her last birthday. You're the responsible one, the boring one. Tom has vision. Tom has gambling debts and a fraud investigation coming his way. Her face paled. What investigation? The one I'm helping build against him and Patricia Coleman. You wouldn't dare. Try me. A car door slammed nearby. My father emerged from their Mercedes, looking uncomfortable as usual. Vivian, please, he said to my mother. Not here. Did you know about the money laundering, Dad? I asked. Or did you just sign whatever papers Mom put in front of you, like always? He flinched. In the harsh neon lights of the casino entrance, the lines on his face deepened. I saw not just the man who had failed to protect me from my mother's favoritism, but also the young soldier who had once been trained to follow orders without question, the accountant who had built a career on precision and rules, the father who had once taught me to ride a bike with infinite patience. Your brother made some mistakes. But what? But he's your son? But he deserves another chance? I laughed bitterly. I gave you chances for 20 years. I gave you everything I had. We never asked for, yes, you did. Every single time, every crisis, every bill, every temporary loan that was never repaid, you asked. And I gave and gave and gave. Ellie. I turned. Sharon stood there, having just pulled into the parking lot. She took in the scene, my mother's rage, my father's discomfort, my shaking hands. Everything okay here? She asked, moving to stand beside me. We're having a family discussion, my mother snapped. Family? Sharon's voice dripped acid. Funny, I thought you wrote Ellie out of the family. Or does she only count as family when you need her money? This doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. Because I've spent years watching you drain her dry, and I'm done being quiet about it. Sharon took my arm. Come on, Ellie. Let them deal with their golden child's mess themselves. As we walked away, my mother called out, You'll regret this when everything comes out about Tom's business. You mean his money laundering? I turned back. Don't worry, Mom. Everything will come out. I'm making sure of it. Back in my car, Sharon squeezed my hand. You okay? I watched through the windshield as my parents huddled together, whispering frantically. Tom emerged from the casino, saw them, and tried to retreat, but too late. I'm filing the court petition tomorrow, I said, for a fraud investigation on the asset transfer. Rob says we have enough to start. Good. Sharon nodded firmly. Let them sweat. My phone buzzed with a text from Rob. Just got word Patricia Coleman has 3 other clients under investigation. This goes deeper than we thought. I started my car, watching my family argue in the casino parking lot. They look small from here. Their designer clothes and luxury cars just window dressing on a house of cards. And I was about to blow it all down. The truth. The repo man came for Tom's BMW on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my office window across the street as they hooked it up to the tow truck. Tom ran out in his silk pajamas, shouting and waving his arms like a windmill in a hurricane. My phone buzzed, Sharon sending me updates from the bank. 3 bounce checks this week. Their power's getting cut off tomorrow. I typed back. They have a generator. I bought it last year. Yeah, about that. Tom tried to pawn it yesterday. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Of course he did. My office door opened, and Rob walked in carrying a thick manila folder. The court accepted our petition. Fraud investigation is officially open. How long until? My phone rang, my father's number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. Eleanor. His voice cracked. Please, I need you to talk sense into your brother. He just doesn't know what he's doing. The mighty Tom, the golden child with vision, reduced to needing his boring sister's help. How the tables had turned. Remember when I needed someone to talk sense into all of you? I kept my voice level. When I said giving Tom unlimited access to money was a bad idea? When I warned you about his gambling? Did anyone listen to me then? Dad, you thought he could do no wrong. And now look where that got you. He started crying. Actually crying. In 20 years of playing their ATM, I'd never heard my father cry. I ended the call. You okay? Rob asked softly. No. I stood up, pacing. Yes. I don't know. This should feel better, right? Watching them fall apart? Revenge is complicated. He opened the folder. Speaking of which, look what we found about Patricia Coleman. Documents spilled across my desk, bank statements, court records, evidence of previous fraud cases mysteriously dropped. And there in the middle of it all, a connection I hadn't expected. She's been working with the same gambling outfit Tom's mixed up with, Rob explained. This isn't just about your family anymore. This is organized crime. My stomach lurched. Is Tom in danger if he doesn't pay what he owes? Yeah, probably. I sank back into my chair. This was supposed to be simple revenge. Freeze some accounts. Let them struggle a bit. Teach them a lesson. But now? My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Your brother owes us money. Family should help family. You have 48 hours. I showed Rob the message. We need to call the police, he said. And tell them what? That my brother's involved in money laundering with the mob? Better than waiting for them to hurt him. I thought about Tom. Spoiled, entitled, reckless Tom, and over his head with dangerous people. Despite everything, my chest tightened with worry. Another text came through, this time from my mother. The power's out. We can't afford food this week. Please, Eleanor, you've made your point. Don't answer it, Rob warned. They're trying to manipulate you again. I know. I stared at the message. But what if Tom really is in danger? Then he got himself there. You're not responsible for saving him. My office door burst open. Sharon rushed in, face flushed. "You need to see this," she said, thrusting her phone at me. On the screen was a local news article, "Prominent lawyer under investigation for multiple fraud cases." Patricia Coleman's photo stared back at me. "It's starting," Rob said. "Once this hits the news, everything else will unravel." My phone rang again. Tom. This time using a new number. "Eleanor, please," he begged when I answered. "These guys, they're serious. They came to the house last night. Mom's terrified. Should have thought about that before you got involved with them." I didn't know. I didn't think. That's the problem, Tom. You never think. You just expect everyone else to clean up your messes. "They're going to hurt me." The words hung in the air. I looked at Rob, then Sharon, seeing my own conflict reflected in their faces. "Give me an hour," I said finally, and hung up. "Ellie," Sharon started. "I know." I grabbed my coat. "But if anything happened to him, even after everything they did, you're not responsible for saving them," Rob repeated. "No," I agreed. "But I'm responsible for what I do next, and I won't have their blood on my hands, even if they deserve it." I headed for the door, then paused. "But that doesn't mean I'm going to make it easy for them." The resolution, Edward Sullivan's office, reeked of old money and expensive cigars. He sat behind his mahogany desk, looking exactly like the family friend who'd watched me grow up. Silver-haired, Brooks Brothers suit, grandfatherly smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Your mother called me," he said, folding his hands. "She's quite concerned about the family situation." "I'm sure she is." I placed a USB drive on his desk. "But before you decide to play White Knight, you should see what's really going on." He plugged in the drive, and his face darkened as he scrolled through the documents, bank statements, casino receipts, money transfers to shell companies, the evidence Rob and I had gathered. "Tom's been laundering money," I explained. "That startup he pitched you last month doesn't exist. It's all a front." Dear God. He removed his reading glasses. "Does Vivian know?" "Mom sees what she wants to see. Always has. And you're showing me this because they're about to ask you for money. Probably already have. And I don't want you getting dragged into their mess." He leaned back, studying me. "You know, I always wondered why such a bright girl stayed in that toxic situation for so long. I thought if I just tried hard enough, gave enough." I swallowed hard. "Pretty stupid, huh?" "No." His voice softened. "Just human." My phone buzzed, Rob texting updates about the fraud case. Patricia Coleman had been suspended pending investigation. The walls were closing in. "Thank you for the warning," Edward said, standing. "I'll decline any financial request from your family." Walking out of his office, I felt lighter somehow. One less safety net for them to cling to. Back at my apartment, I found my mother waiting by the door. "You went to Edward," she accused. "You poisoned him against us." "The truth isn't poison, Mom. It's just the truth. We need his help. The electricity is still off. Tom's in trouble." "Tom's in trouble because he gambled with dirty money." I unlocked my door, but she followed me inside. "And you enabled him every step of the way." "I protected him." "That's what mothers do." "What about protecting me?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "Who protected me when I was working 60-hour weeks to keep you all afloat? When I was living on frozen dinners while you vacationed in Europe? You were strong. You didn't need. I needed my mother." My voice cracked. In that moment, I wasn't 53 anymore. I was 8 years old again, watching Mom fuss over Tom's scraped knee while ignoring my academic awards. I was 16, sitting alone at my piano recital because they were at Tom's baseball game. I was 30, canceling my date with Rob to bail Tom out of another financial disaster. I needed you to love me as much as you loved him. To be proud of me just once without asking for money in the next breath. She sank onto my couch, the same second-hand couch I'd had for years because every spare dollar went to them. For once, she had no quick retort. "Your father's been calling you," she said quietly. "I know. He misses you. He misses my checkbook." She flinched. "That's not fair." Neither was cutting me out after 20 years of support. Neither was planning it for years while taking my money. My phone rang. Rob again. I answered on speaker. Patricia Coleman is talking to investigators, he announced. She's naming names, including Tom's. This is about to blow wide open. My mother's face went ash white. How bad? I asked. Bad enough that anyone connected to these accounts needs a lawyer now. After he hung up, my mother stared at me with desperate eyes. Please, Eleanor, help us fix this. Fix it. I laughed bitterly. Like I fixed everything else? No, you made your choice when you signed those transfer papers. Now you get to live with it. We'll lose everything. Welcome to my world. I opened my door. Now get out. After she left, I called Sharon. You okay? She asked. No. I poured a glass of wine. I keep waiting to feel better about all this. Shouldn't revenge feel better? Maybe because deep down you're not doing this for revenge anymore. You're doing it because it's right. They need to face consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Please call me. Just you and me. No mother, no Tom. I need to tell you something. I stared at the message, remembering all the times he'd stood by silently while my mother and Tom took and took and took. Delete it, Sharon advised. But something in my gut said this was different. Maybe because for the first time in 20 years, my father wanted to talk to me alone. I'll call you back, I told Sharon, and pressed dial on my father's number. Whatever he had to say, it wouldn't change anything. But maybe, just maybe, it would help me understand why. The confession. My father sat across from me at the corner diner, hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. Without his usual expensive clothes and my mother's influence, he looked smaller, older. I knew, he said quietly, about the asset transfer, about Tom's gambling, about all of it. And you did nothing. I was a coward. His voice cracked. Every time your mother pushed for more money, every time Tom made another mistake, I stayed quiet. It was easier than fighting, easier than protecting my daughter. He flinched, arthritic fingers tightening around his mug. I remembered how those same hands had taught me to ride a bike, had applauded at my college graduation, had trembled when signing the refinancing papers for their house. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it, that you didn't need protection. I needed a father. The waitress refilled our cups. Neither of us drank. The gambling debts, he continued. They're worse than you know. These people Tom's involved with. They came to the house again last night. Did they hurt anyone? No, but they made it clear what happens if he doesn't pay. He pulled out an envelope. That's why I'm here. To give you this. Inside was a formal confession detailing everything: the money laundering, Patricia Coleman's involvement, the asset transfer scheme, all signed and notarized. Why? Because it's time someone in this family did the right thing. He met my eyes, really looked at me for perhaps the first time in decades. Use it. Help the investigation. Maybe. Maybe it'll help reduce Tom's charges if I come forward first. My phone buzzed. Rob calling with updates. Patricia Coleman took a plea deal, he said when I answered. She's turning over everything. Bank records, client lists, all of it. The DA's office is moving fast. I looked at my father. How much does Tom owe these people? 300,000. The number hit like a punch to the gut. Jesus, Dad. Your mother's trying to sell her jewelry. The cars are next, but it won't be enough. And you think that's my problem? Because I don't. He pushed away his coffee. I think it's our mess to clean up. I needed you to know the truth and to say I'm sorry for everything. My phone buzzed again, Sharon this time. Turn on the news now. I pulled up the local news app. There it was. Breaking news. Local lawyer's fraud scheme exposed. Multiple arrests expected. It's starting, I told my father. He nodded slowly. Good, good. They might arrest your son. Better than what those loan sharks will do to him. He stood up, leaving money for the coffee. Whatever happens next, Eleanor, you did the right thing. even if it doesn't feel like it. After he left, I sat there watching the news unfold. More details emerged: connections to organized crime, multiple victims, millions in laundered funds. Tom's name hadn't surfaced yet, but it would. Rob called again. Police are heading to your parents' house with warrants. They're bringing Tom in for questioning. I drove there without thinking, arriving just as the police cars pulled up. My mother stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth. Tom sat on the porch steps, head in his hands. Miss Morgan? A detective approached me. We understand you have information about this case. I handed over my father's confession. Everything you need to know is in there. My mother's cry of betrayal cut through the air. How could you? How could I? I turned to face her. How could you spend 20 years taking everything I had, then try to throw me away? How could you watch your son destroy himself and call it vision? How could you? Tom looked up as the officers approached him. Sis, please. I'm not your ATM anymore, I said quietly. I'm not your safety net. I'm just the daughter you never wanted. Finally walking away, they led Tom to a police car. My mother collapsed against the door frame, sobbing. And my father? My father stood straight for the first time in years, nodding slightly to me. Rob appeared beside me. You okay? No. I watched the police car drive away. But I will be. New beginnings. The realtor handed me the keys to my new condo with a bright smile. Congratulations. It's all yours. Standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through floor to ceiling windows, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. No guilt about the down payment. No worry about keeping money aside for family emergencies. Just my space, bought with my money, for me. My phone buzzed, Rob with updates about the case. Tom took a plea deal, he said when I answered. 2 years plus restitution. The organized crime connection helped. They're more interested in the bigger fish. And Patricia Coleman? Disbarred, looking at 5 to 7 years. He paused. Your father's testimony made a difference. The DA was impressed by his cooperation. I sat on the floor, leaning against freshly painted walls. Have you heard from my mother? She's still trying to salvage what she can. Selling everything, claiming she knew nothing about the money laundering. Another pause. She asked about you. Of course she did. She probably needs money for lawyers. Actually, she asked if you were happy. The question caught me off guard. In 20 years of bankrolling their lifestyle, my mother had never once asked about my happiness. A knock at the door interrupted my response. Sharon stood there with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. First night in your new place, she announced, walking in. We're celebrating. I put Rob on speaker as she poured. Your father left something at my office for you, he said. Want me to bring it over? What is it? A letter and the family photo albums. My throat tightened. Those albums held 40 years of memories, birthdays, graduations, holidays, before the money took over, before Tom's gambling, before everything fell apart. Bring them, I said. While we waited, Sharon helped me unpack. Each box represented something I'd bought for myself instead of my family. New dishes instead of paying Tom's car payment. Artwork instead of my mother's country club dues. Rob arrived with a banker's box and a pizza. We sat on my new floor, eating and drinking as I opened the letter from my father. Dear Eleanor, these albums belong to you. They remind me of when we were a real family, before money poisoned everything. Your mother and I failed you. We took your love and twisted it into obligation. We took your generosity and treated it as a right. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that you were always enough. You were always extraordinary. We were too blind to see it. Tom starts his sentence next week. Your mother is staying with her sister? The house sells at auction soon. Everything we built on your sacrifice is gone, and that's exactly as it should be. Be happy, princess. Be free. Love, Dad. I closed the letter, hands shaking slightly. You okay? Sharon asked. Yeah. I reached for the albums. I think I actually am. We spent the evening looking through photos, laughing at old hairstyles and forgotten moments. In every picture, I searched my younger face for signs of what was coming. The years of sacrifice, the betrayal, the revenge. Look at this one, Rob said, pointing to a Christmas photo. You all look so happy. We were, I admitted, before money became more important than love. My phone lit up with a text from my mother. The house auction is tomorrow. One last chance to save it. I showed it to Sharon and Rob. She's still trying to manipulate you, Sharon said. I know. I deleted the message without responding. But it doesn't work anymore. Rob refilled our glasses. To new beginnings. To freedom, I corrected, looking around my new space. At the boxes waiting to be unpacked. At friends who loved me without conditions. At a future unburdened by toxic obligation. I finally felt the weight lift completely. The revenge hadn't healed me. The satisfaction of watching their world crumble hadn't filled the void. What healed me was walking away, choosing myself, building something new from the ashes of what they destroyed. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from my father. The auction's done. It's really over now. I hope you're finding peace. I looked at Sharon and Rob, at the empty champagne bottle and half-eaten pizza, at the photo albums full of memories that couldn't hurt me anymore. I am. I typed back. Then I put down my phone and turned to my friends. Who's ready to help me paint this place? Maybe loving people who never loved me back wasn't my weakness after all. Maybe letting them go, choosing myself, building a new life without their poison, maybe that was finally my strength. And strength, I was discovering at 53, felt a lot like freedom. Family doesn't steal identities. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't take someone's sacrifice and turn it into leverage for someone else's dreams. I hear myself speaking these words, my voice unnervingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. My father sits across from me at my kitchen table, his face ashen as he finally understands what I've done. My brother Eric stands by the window, the confident startup CEO facade crumbling as he realizes his world is collapsing. My phone buzzes with another notification. The FDA investigation I anonymously triggered is making headlines. This is your fault, Eric whispers, his voice breaking. You've ruined everything. No, I correct him, meeting his gaze steadily. I exposed everything. You ruined it yourself when you decided to commit fraud. How did we get here? How did Margaret Maggie Brown, a dutiful daughter, respected nurse practitioner, eternal family fixer, become the architect of her own family's downfall? It began with a check. A check for $217,000 and 5 years of my life. Flashback the payment. I held the cashier's check in my trembling hands, staring at the numbers that represented 5 years of my life. $217,000. The final payment on my parents' mortgage. My fingers traced the edges of the paper, remembering all the double shifts at the hospital, the missed vacations, the dates I'd canceled because I picked up extra hours. The kitchen in my childhood home smelled like Sunday pot roast and my father's coffee, the same brand they'd been buying since I was 10. Mom was setting the table, humming to herself, while Dad stood by the counter, arms crossed, watching me with that inscrutable expression I'd never learned to read. For years, I had imagined this moment, handing over the check that would free them from debt, seeing relief and gratitude wash over their faces. Perhaps tears, heartfelt hugs, maybe even a small celebration. After all, wasn't this what family did for each other? Wasn't this what I'd been taught, that sacrificing for those you love was the ultimate expression of devotion? Are you absolutely sure about this, honey? Mom's voice carried that familiar note of concern that always made me feel both loved and slightly patronized. You could use this money for a down payment on your own house, or that master's degree you've been talking about. I thought about the tiny apartment I'd been living in for 8 years. About the vacations I declined, the dates I canceled to pick up extra shifts. About watching my colleagues buy homes and start families while I'd been saving every extra penny. The promotion I turned down because it would have meant relocating to Boston too far to help out when Dad had his heart scared 3 years ago. It's what I've been working toward, Mom, I said, offering the smile I'd perfected over years of being the responsible one. I want to do this. Dad uncrossed his arms and reached for the check. Well, we appreciate it. That was it. No tears, no hugs, no celebration. Just, we appreciate it. Like I'd bought them dinner, not sacrificed half a decade of my life to free them from debt. I felt something drop inside me, that balloon of expectation I'd been carrying deflated with three casual words. But I pushed the feeling down, as I always did with disappointment. What had I expected? Dad wasn't one for emotional displays. Mom showed enough feeling for both of them. I swallowed hard. I thought maybe we could go out to dinner tonight. Celebrate? Mom glanced at her watch, the one I'd given her for Christmas last year, spending more than I should have because she'd admired it in a store window months earlier. Oh, sweetie, we actually have plans with Eric tonight. He's pitching his new business idea to some investors. But maybe this weekend? Of course. Eric, my younger brother by 8 years. The eternal entrepreneur, always chasing the next big thing. The special one. Sure, I said, the familiar weight of disappointment settling in my chest. This weekend works. A memory surfaced my 10th birthday when Dad had forgotten to pick me up from soccer practice because Eric had a school play. I'd waited for 2 hours in the rain before walking home, soaked and shivering. Mom had been apologetic but distracted, helping Eric rehearse his lines. "You're so independent, Maggie," she'd said, as if that explained everything. As if being self-sufficient was compensation enough for being forgotten. As I drove home that night, I pictured how this moment should have felt: tearful hugs, perhaps a small celebration dinner, meaningful glances acknowledging the magnitude of what I'd done. Instead, I got a perfunctory thanks and an empty house to return to. It's fine, I whispered to myself, gripping the steering wheel tighter. They're free of debt now. That's what matters. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, the same one I'd lived in for 8 years, because every time I'd saved enough for a down payment on a house, something had come up. Eric's college tuition. Dad's medical bills. Mom's car repairs. Always something, always someone else's need taking precedence over my own dreams. But it was fine. This was what family did for each other. At least, it was what I did. At the coffee shop The Truth. 3 days later, I was having coffee with my cousin Sarah when my world tilted on its axis. "That was incredibly generous of you, paying off the mortgage," she said, stirring her latte. "Especially with them taking out a new one so soon." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "What?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Oh, you didn't know?" She set her spoon down carefully. "I thought Uncle Robert was talking about it at the family barbecue last week. Something about Eric's new healthcare tech startup. MetaMatch?" The mug felt suddenly heavy in my hands. The noise of the coffee shop, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other patrons, the soft background music all faded away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. "How much?" My voice sounded distant, as if someone else was speaking. Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes. I shouldn't have said anything. "How much, Sarah?" She traced the rim of her cup with one finger. 250. 250,000. I set the mug down with exaggerated care, afraid I might shatter it, or that I might shatter. A new mortgage. Bigger than the one I'd just paid off. Taken out without a word to me, without even the courtesy of letting me know that my sacrifice had been essentially erased. "I'm sorry, Maggie." Sarah reached across the table, her face concerned. "I really thought you knew." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Eric says it's going to revolutionize personalized healthcare," she continued, misreading my silence as interest. "Something about matching patients with treatments based on their genetic profile." Uncle Robert seemed really excited about it. Of course he was. Dad had always been more animated about Eric's ventures than about anything I'd ever done. When I'd graduated top of my nursing class, his response had been a nod and "good job." When Eric had started his doomed food delivery app, Dad had talked about it for weeks, telling anyone who would listen about his son's entrepreneurial genius. "Are you okay?" Sarah's voice cut through my thoughts. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I am. 5 years of my life. Every extra shift, every declined invitation, every penny pinched, all of it erased in a single decision that no one had bothered to mention to me. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, the same house I had just freed from debt, the same house they had immediately leveraged for my brother's latest dream. The porch light was on, welcoming me home like always. Funny how things could look exactly the same when everything had changed. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the living room window, I could see them, the perfect picture of domestic contentment. Mom was doing her crossword puzzle in her favorite armchair. Dad was watching the news, the volume turned low. The scene was so familiar, so normal, that for a second I wondered if Sarah had been mistaken. But Sarah wasn't one for gossip or drama. If she said they'd remortgaged the house, they had. I walked up the familiar path to the front door. How many times had I trudged up these steps after a double shift at the hospital, exhausted but still stopping by to help Mom with groceries or to fix Dad's computer? How many Sunday dinners had I attended, listening to Eric's latest schemes while my own achievements went unmentioned? Mom looked up with a smile as I entered. Maggie, what a nice surprise. We were just thinking about you. Is it true? My voice sounded strange, even to me. Did you remortgage the house for Eric? The smile froze on Mom's face. Dad muted the TV. The silence that followed was answer enough. Maggie, Dad finally said, setting down the remote. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you took out a loan bigger than what I just paid off and gave it to Eric without even telling me. Mom put aside her crossword puzzle. Your brother has a real opportunity here, she said, her voice taking on that placating tone she used when trying to smooth over family tensions. This could be his big break. I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised even me. Like the food delivery app was his big break? Or the social media platform for pets? That's not fair, Dad's voice hardened. Eric takes risks. Sometimes that's what success requires. And my risk? My sacrifice? What was that? I could feel my voice rising, but I couldn't seem to control it. I gave you every penny I saved for 5 years. I worked double shifts. I gave up vacations, relationships, a life, to pay off your mortgage. Nobody asked you to pay off our mortgage, Dad said flatly. That was your choice. The words hit like a physical blow. I remembered the day I'd made that choice, sitting in their kitchen after Dad's heart scare, promising I'd make sure they never had to worry about losing their home. Mom had cried, hugging me. Dad had squeezed my shoulder, the closest he ever came to a display of affection. It had felt like a moment of connection, of understanding. But now I saw it for what it really was, just another instance of Maggie fixing things, Maggie sacrificing, Maggie doing what was expected of her. Mom must have seen something in my face because she stood up, reaching for me. Sweetie, we're grateful, we are. But this is our house. We don't owe you explanations about what we do with it. I stepped back from her touch. The room felt too small, too warm, too familiar. Every family photo on the wall, every cushion on the couch, every memory suddenly felt like a lie. You're right, I said quietly. You don't owe me explanations. I turned and walked out, ignoring Mom calling my name. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, staring at the house I'd sacrificed so much to save, the house that was now leveraged for Eric's latest dream. A memory surfaced of Dad sitting me down at age 12, explaining about responsibility while Eric played video games in the next room. You're the older one, Maggie. We expect more from you. It was the family mantra, the script we'd all been following for decades. But scripts could be rewritten. As I drove away, something crystallized within me. They didn't owe me explanations, but I was starting to realize exactly what I owed them. And I would pay that debt in full. At the apartment, tallying the debts, the Excel spreadsheet on my laptop screen told a story, one of systematic financial entanglement that made my stomach turn. I sat at my kitchen table, methodically listing every shared account, every co-signed loan, every automatic payment that connected me to my family. Column A, account name. Column B, monthly cost. Column C, who actually uses it. Column D, who actually pays for it. The pattern was unmistakable, lines of data painting a picture of exploitation I had been too blind or too willing to see. Diane, my colleague and closest friend, stood over my shoulder, her face growing increasingly incredulous as the list grew longer. "Girl, this is wild," she said, pouring us each a glass of wine that neither of us touched. "I knew you were helping them, but this is like financial abuse." I'd never thought of it that way. In my mind, it had always been supporting my family, doing what was needed. But seeing it all laid out in columns and rows, the imbalance was stark and undeniable. Netflix, Hulu, Prime, I muttered, typing them all in. All in my name because Dad said their credit wasn't good enough for streaming services. I laughed hollowly. But apparently it was good enough for a $250,000 mortgage. What about Eric's car loan? The one you co-signed? I clicked to another tab. Still 3 years left on it. Payments coming from my account because he was between ventures 6 months ago. I scrolled down, revealing more lines of data. And his car insurance. And his cell phone. And the emergency credit card he uses that's actually connected to my account. Diane picked up her wine glass, swirling the red liquid thoughtfully. "Does he even know how much you're covering for him?" "Probably not," I admitted. "It's always been easier to just handle it than to try to get him to take responsibility." "Cancel it all," Diane said firmly, pushing the untouched wine toward me. "Every single thing." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Dinner this weekend? We miss you." I ignored it, focusing instead on the laptop. One by one, I started closing accounts. Netflix, canceled. Hulu, canceled. The family cell phone plan I'd been managing since college terminated effective end of billing cycle. Each click felt like cutting a cord, like removing a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I was putting myself first. "What about Ray's car insurance?" Diane pointed at the screen. "That's next," I said, pulling up the insurance website. "He missed 3 payments last month. I covered them because I didn't want my credit score to take a hit. And now." I clicked cancel policy. "He can figure it out himself." My phone buzzed again, Eric this time. "Hey sis, insurance company says there's some issue, can you check?" I put the phone face down. "You know they're going to freak out," Diane warned, finally taking a sip of her wine. "Probably." I opened my email, creating a new account under a fake name, routing it through a VPN. "But I'm done being the family ATM." The doorbell rang. Diane answered while I kept working. She returned with a manila envelope. "Delivery for you," she said, and handing it over. Inside was a glossy brochure for Eric's new startup, MetaMatch, apparently the future of personalized healthcare. I flipped through it, my blood running colder with each page. "Look at this," I showed Diane. "Medical Advisory Board. Dr. Margaret Brown, nurse practitioner." Diane grabbed the brochure. "Did you agree to this?" "Never." My hands were shaking, but with anger now, not shock. "He's using my credentials to legitimize his company without my knowledge. That's illegal." "Yes," I said slowly, an idea forming. "It is." When I was 16, I found our family dog hit by a car. I remember running inside, screaming for help, while Eric stood frozen on the lawn. Dad had looked at me, not him, and said, "Handle it, Maggie." So I did. Wrapped our bleeding pet in a blanket, called the vet, held Eric while he cried. It was always my job to fix things, to handle the crises, to be the reliable one. That Christmas, I'd asked for a leather-bound journal. Instead, I got a set of encyclopedias because they'll be useful for your homework. Eric had asked for a video game and gotten it, plus a new gaming system to play it on. When I'd mentioned the disparity to Mom, she'd said, "You're different, Maggie. You're the practical one. Eric needs more encouragement." My entire life had been shaped by this narrative. I was the responsible one, the one who could handle things, the one who didn't need special treatment or consideration because I was so strong and independent. But what if those weren't compliments? What if they were just convenient labels to justify the double standard? My phone buzzed again. "Dad, this time. Your mother's upset. Call her." Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for Carol Martin, a journalist known for exposing fraudulent healthcare startups. Her articles about tech companies making false medical claims populated the screen. What are you thinking? Diane asked, watching me. I'm thinking it's time someone looked closer at MetaMatch. And I know just who might be interested. Maggie, Diane's voice was careful. This is your family we're talking about. I stopped typing and looked at her. They stopped being family the moment they took my sacrifice and used it to fund Eric's dreams. Just be careful. Revenge can backfire. This isn't revenge, I said, turning back to the laptop. This is consequences. I spent the next hour documenting everything. Screenshots of the brochure, Eric's LinkedIn profile touting my involvement, emails where he dodged my questions about the company. I attached them all to an email to Carol. My phone kept buzzing. Mom, why is Netflix not working? Eric, insurance company won't reinstate without payment. Need help ASAP. Dad, family meeting tomorrow, 6 p.m. Be there. I ignored them all, focusing on the email. Finally, I hit send. What now? Diane asked. I opened my banking app and started closing joint accounts. Now we wait. And while we wait, I'm going to make sure that when everything falls apart, I'm not caught in the debris. Diane sat across from me, her expression a mixture of concern and admiration. They're going to say you're being cruel. I thought about the mortgage, about years of sacrifice dismissed with, we don't owe you explanations. Maybe, I said, canceling the last automatic payment to Eric's car loan. But I learned from the best. My phone buzzed one final time, a new email notification from Carol Martin. MetaMatch investigation. Interesting tip. Would like to meet in person. When are you available? I smiled, feeling a cold satisfaction settle over me. Actually, I said to Diane, reaching for the untouched wine. Now might be a good time for that drink. Because tomorrow, I would start dismantling everything my brother had built on the foundation of my stolen credentials. And I would do it with the same quiet efficiency I'd once used to support them. The meeting is setting fire to bridges. The coffee shop was busy enough that no one would overhear us, but quiet enough that we could talk. Carol Martin looked exactly like her Twitter profile. Sharp eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, a notebook in hand, and an expression that said she could smell a story from miles away. So, she said, stirring her Americano, tell me about MetaMatch. I pulled out my tablet, sliding it across the table. Everything's here. Company registration documents, marketing materials, investor pitch decks. All of them using my medical credentials without consent. Carol scrolled through the files, her eyebrows rising. And you're their chief medical advisor, according to them. First I heard about it was in their brochure. Your brother's the CEO? Yes. She looked up at me, eyes assessing. Family drama? Family consequences, I corrected. There's more. Check the investor documents. She swiped through more pages, then stopped. They're claiming FDA approval pending, which they don't have and won't get because their algorithm is basically webbed with prettier graphics. And you know this how? I pulled out one more document, an internal email I'd gotten from Matt, Eric's childhood friend turned business partner, because their tech lead had sent it to me asking for help making their claims more medically accurate. The tech lead found my contact information and reached out directly, I explained. He had no idea I wasn't actually involved with the company. He just wanted help making their medical claims sound more legitimate. Carol read the email, her eyes widening. This is pretty damning. That's why I came to you. I leaned forward. Your articles about health tech fraud get results. And this needs results. She studied me for a long moment. You understand what this will do to your brother's company, his reputation? I thought about the mortgage, about years of manipulation, about Eric's lifetime of escaping consequences while I cleaned up his messes. Perfectly, I replied. More than okay. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom. Missing you at family dinner. Eric has big news about the company. I turned the phone face down. One more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. Their investor pitch claims they have a partnership with Memorial Hospital. They don't. I work there. I checked. Carol's eyes lit up. Now that's interesting. She made some notes. I'll need to verify everything independently, of course. Of course. I stood up. One condition: I remain anonymous, at least initially. Understood. She gathered her materials. This will take a few days to fact check, but if everything checks out, well, let's just say MetaMatch might have a very interesting week ahead. As I walked to my car, I remembered a conversation with my father when I was 18, just before I left for nursing school. You're making the safe choice, he'd said, not unkindly. Eric's different, he's got that entrepreneurial spirit. Takes after my father. I nodded, accepting as always that there were different standards for us. Eric was allowed to dream big and fail spectacularly. I was expected to be steady, reliable, and always available to help pick up the pieces. Dad had never told me about his father, my grandfather, who had apparently been some kind of entrepreneur. It was one of those family stories that seemed to exist only for Eric's benefit, to explain and justify his special status. I'd always been compared to Mom's mother, a practical nurse who'd worked the same hospital job for 40 years. Reliable, they'd called her. Just like me. But there was a difference between being reliable and being taken for granted. Between supporting family and being exploited by them. Between love and servitude. And I was finally learning the difference. The confrontation burning bridges. I was halfway home when Diane called. Eric's looking for you, she said without preamble. He stopped by my office. What did he want? Said he needs to talk about the company. Seemed nervous. I pulled into my driveway, noticing Eric's BMW parked on the street. A car he couldn't afford on his non-existent income, but somehow always managed to upgrade every couple of years. I wondered briefly if the payments for this one were also coming from Mom and Dad's new mortgage. Let me guess, he's at my house now? Want me to come over? No, I said, watching Eric pace on my porch. I can handle this. Eric's face was flushed, his designer shirt wrinkled. Where have you been? He demanded as I got out of my car. I've been calling all day. Working. I unlocked my front door. Like most people do. He followed me inside. We need to talk about MetaMatch. Oh? I kept my voice neutral, hanging up my coat with deliberate slowness. What about it? Some reporter's been asking questions about our medical advisory board. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. If anyone starts digging, I know I should have asked before using your credentials, but what? I turned to face him. But you thought I wouldn't mind? Or you thought I wouldn't find out? It's not like that. I needed credibility for the investors and your family. Family, I repeated. Like when Mom and Dad remortgaged the house I just paid off for your startup? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was their choice. And this is mine. I pulled out my phone, showing him Carol's business card. I had coffee with her today. The color drained from his face. You're the one who contacted her? Consider it my contribution to MetaMatch's transparency efforts. You can't do this. He stepped forward, desperate. The investors. If this gets out, then what? I met his gaze steadily. Then they'll find out you lied. That you committed fraud. Mom and Dad will lose everything. They already made that choice. There was a moment of silence as the reality of the situation sank in. Eric looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Perhaps he was. The reliable big sister who always fixed everything was gone. What happened to you, Maggie? He whispered. What happened to me? I thought of the day I'd gotten my nursing license, how proudly I'd shown it to my parents. Mom had hugged me, Dad had nodded approvingly, and then they'd immediately asked if I could help Eric with his college application essays. My achievements were stepping stones. His were celebrations. I thought of all the birthdays when my gifts had been practical books, clothes, household items, while Eric's had been extravagant. The time I'd needed a loan for car repairs and Dad had lectured me about financial responsibility, while the same month they'd given Eric money for a trip to Europe because he needed to expand his horizons. I thought of the countless times I'd covered Eric's portion of a family gift, or picked up the check at dinner, or loaned him money that was never repaid, all while being told how generous and understanding I was. I grew up, I said simply. Now, get out. Maggie, please get out, Eric. He left, shoulders slumped. Through the window, I watched him sit in his car for a long time before driving away. My phone buzzed with a text from Carol. Story runs Monday. You might want to prepare for fallout. I smiled, remembering Dad's words. We don't owe you explanations. Well, now they owed explanations to everyone. The fallout reaping what they've sown. The article dropped at 6 a.m. Monday morning. By 6:05, my phone was exploding with notifications. I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee, watching it all unfold like a perfectly choreographed dance. Healthcare startup MetaMatch caught in credentialing scandal, screamed the headline. Carol had done her job well. The article was devastating in its precision, detailing how MetaMatch had falsely claimed medical expertise, misrepresented FDA approval status, and fabricated hospital partnerships. Mom called first, then Dad, then Eric 3 times in succession. I let them all go to voicemail. I listened to the messages as I got ready for work. Mom's voice, tearful and confused. Maggie, please call us. There's a horrible article about Eric's company. We need to talk. Dad, terse and demanding. Call immediately. Family emergency. Eric, initially angry, then increasingly desperate with each call. At 8 a.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Dad standing there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Did you do this? He asked without preamble. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Coffee? Damn it, Maggie, answer me. His voice shook. Did you go to that reporter? I poured myself another cup of coffee. Yes. He sank into a kitchen chair. Why? Really? I leaned against the counter. You want to talk about why? How about we talk about my name being used without my consent? Or the investors you convinced to mortgage their futures on Eric's lies? He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. The words exploded out of me. But that didn't stop you from taking everything I gave you and handing it to him. My phone buzzed again, a text from Matt. Investors are pulling out. What the hell happened? Dad's phone rang. Mom, according to the screen. He answered on speaker. Robert? Her voice was panicked. Eric just got a call from the FDA. They're launching an investigation. I couldn't help but smile. The FDA had been my anonymous tip too. Barbara, I'm with Maggie, Dad said. She's admitted to going to the press. Maggie, Mom's voice cracked. How could you do this to your brother? The same way you did it to me, I replied calmly. Without explanation or apology. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Eric, looking like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. The investors want their money back, he said, pushing past me into the house. All of them. Even the early ones. That sounds expensive, I observed. He whirled on me. This is your fault. You've ruined everything. No, I corrected him. I exposed everything. You ruined it yourself when you decided to commit fraud. It wasn't fraud. It was creative marketing. Tell that to the FDA, I said. And the investors. And Memorial Hospital's legal team. Dad stood up. We can fix this. We'll remortgage the house again. With what equity? I cut in. You already leveraged everything for his first round of funding. My phone buzzed with an email notification from my lawyer, confirming he'd filed the legal notice about my unauthorized credentials. What's that? Eric asked, watching me read. My lawyer. Filing notice that since my name and credentials were used fraudulently, I may be seeking damages. The color drained from Dad's face. Damages? From the company and its officers. I looked directly at Eric. That's you, little brother. You can't sue me, Eric whispered. I'm family. Family, I laughed. Family doesn't steal identities. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't take someone's sacrifice and turn it into leverage for someone else's dreams. Mom's voice came through Dad's phone, still on speaker. Maggie, please, we can work this out. Like we worked out the mortgage? I asked. Or like we worked out Eric's car loan? Or his insurance? Or any of the thousand other times you took advantage of my help? You went too far, Dad said, his voice hard. I met his gaze steadily. No, you just never saw how far I could go. Eric's phone rang mad again. He answered, his face growing paler with each second. The tech team is quitting, he said after hanging up. They're afraid of legal exposure. Smart of them, I noted. Please, Eric turned to me. Help me fix this. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. The designer clothes bought with investor money. The expensive watch. The entitled assumption that I would clean up his mess, just like always. I remembered all the times I'd rescued him. The college paper I'd practically written for him when he was too hungover to do it himself. The rent I'd covered when he'd spent his money on a spontaneous trip to Vegas. The time I'd called in favors to get him an interview at my friend's company, only to have him blow it off because something better came up. No, I said simply. What? No, I'm not helping. I'm not fixing this. I'm not covering for you. Not anymore. Dad's phone buzzed with a text. He read it, his face grim. The bank wants to discuss the mortgage. Today. Then you should go, I replied, opening my front door. All of you. They left one by one, Eric first, then Dad. Mom's voice on the phone begged me to reconsider until Dad finally hung up. Standing in my quiet house, I picked up my phone and dialed Diane. It's done, I said. The match is lit. I paused, looking at the family photo still hanging on my wall. It had been taken at Eric's college graduation, a mom and dad beaming proudly beside him, me standing slightly to the side, my own recent promotion at the hospital unmentioned and uncelebrated. Time to watch it burn. The hospital professional distance. 2 weeks later, my pager buzzed with an emergency code. A cardiac event in the ear. I rushed down the hall, my mind already shifting into professional mode. The hospital had been my sanctuary since the article broke. At work, I was nurse practitioner Brown, respected for my skills and dedication. Not Maggie, the ungrateful daughter who had betrayed her family. Not the woman whose name was being whispered about in our small community. BP 180 by 95, heart rate 110, patient reporting chest pain and shortness of breath. The nurse rattled off as I approached the curtained bay. I pulled back the curtain and froze. My mother lay on the gurney, oxygen cannula in her nose, looking small and frightened against the white sheets. Your daughter's here, the nurse said, not knowing our connection. Oh, thank God, Mom's voice trembled. Maggie, honey. I took the chart, keeping my face professionally neutral. Anxiety attack with hypertensive episode, I read. When did you last take your blood pressure medication? We ran out. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The pharmacy wouldn't refill without payment, because I'd removed them from my insurance. Another consequence. The doctor's ordering something for anxiety, I said, checking her monitors. You should feel better soon. Maggie, she reached for my hand. Please. We need help. The bank. They're talking foreclosure. Eric's being sued. Your father can't sleep. Stop. I pull my hand away. Just stop. But we're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Was it family when you remortgaged the house I paid for? Was it family when Eric stole my credentials? Was it family when Dad said they didn't owe me explanations? A memory surfaced, Mom teaching me to bake cookies at age 7, flour dusting our noses. Family takes care of each other, she'd said, helping me reach the counter. I'd believed her then. I'd believed her for decades after. But somewhere along the way, family takes care of each other had morphed into Maggie takes care of everyone. A nurse appeared with medication. I stepped back, letting her work. Eric's living in the basement now, Mom said after the nurse left. He had to sell his car. Matt's lawyers took everything else. That sounds like Eric's problem. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. The words echoed in the small space. But that never seemed to matter before. My pager buzzed again, a genuine emergency in another part of the hospital. Your blood pressure should stabilize soon, I said. returning to professional mode. The doctor will discharge you when it does. Maggie, please. I was already walking away, my white coat a perfect shield between us. In the hallway, I paused, leaning against the wall, surprised to find tears burning behind my eyes. Not for them, for the little girl who had tried so hard, for so long, to earn the love that should have been freely given. That night, my doorbell rang. It was Eric, looking nothing like the confident startup Sia he'd been a month ago. I need money, he said without preamble. Just $2,000 for lawyers. No, come on, sis. I'm desperate here. Like I was desperate when you stole my credentials? I crossed my arms. Or like Mom was desperate for attention today. He had the grace to look ashamed. That was low of her. Learned from the best, didn't she? Matt's going to take everything, he said. The investors too. I'll be ruined. You ruined yourself, Eric. I just exposed it. My phone buzzed a text from Dad. Your mother's home. No thanks to you. I showed Eric the message. See? Still my fault somehow. Dad's scared, Eric said. We all are. Everything's falling apart. Yes, I agreed. It is. We stood in silence for a moment, the porch light casting shadows on his face. I never meant, he started. Yes, you did. I cut him off. You meant every bit of it. You just never thought you'd face consequences. I studied my brother's face, trying to find the little boy I'd once adored. The one who'd follow me around, who'd looked up to me, who'd brought me dandelions from the yard and called them flowers. When had that boy turned into this entitled man who thought nothing of stealing my professional identity? What do you want from us? He asked finally. Nothing, I replied. Not anymore. Another text buzzed through from the hospital administrator. Congratulations on the position in Boston. When can you start? Eric saw the message. You're leaving? Got a better offer. Better hospital, better pay. But what about us? What about you? I stepped back inside. Figure it out yourself. I'm done being the family safety net. I closed the door on whatever he was going to say next. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment before walking away, shoulders slumped, looking older than his years. The revelation, becoming the landlord. The subpoena arrived on a Tuesday. I'd been expecting it, Eric's last desperate attempt to shift blame. I handed it straight to my lawyer without even breaking stride. He's claiming you were an informal advisor, my lawyer said over lunch. Says you knew about the company's claims and tacitly approved them. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots of every email where I explicitly told him not to use my name, every text where I demanded he remove my credentials, all dated months before the expos. This is good, she nodded. Very good. My phone buzzed, Sarah calling. I answered, putting it on speaker. Have you seen the local business journal? She asked without preamble. Not yet. Eric's on the front page. Local tech startup spectacular fall. A story of fraud and family betrayal. I smiled. Sounds accurate. Maggie. Sarah's voice softened. I never would have thought family could do that to each other. I didn't either, I replied. Until they did it first. After lunch, I drove past my parents' house, my old sanctuary turned battlefield. The lawn needed mowing. Eric's beaten-up backup car sat in the driveway, looking as defeated as its owner. A figure stood at the window, Mom, watching me drive by. I didn't slow down. Back at my place, Diane was waiting with packing boxes. Your mom called me again, she said, taping up a box. Wanted to know if you'd received the subpoena. Of course she did. I started wrapping photos in newspaper. What did you tell her? That she should try asking you herself. Diane paused. She said she's tried. Said you've blocked their numbers. I did. They're falling apart, you know. The whole family. I carefully wrapped the last photo, my nursing school graduation. They're facing consequences. There's a difference. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Carol Martin standing on my porch. Mind if I come in? She asked when I opened the door. I have something you might want to see. She pulled out her laptop, opening a draft article. Matt sent me these internal emails showing Eric knew exactly what he was doing with your credentials. He even joked about it to investors. I read through them, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. Emails where Eric had laughed about how he was borrowing my credentials, where he told Matt it was fine because she'll never find out, where he dismissed concerns from the tech lead about ethical violations. When does this run? I asked. Tomorrow, she watched me carefully. You sure you don't want to go on record now? Tell your side? No, I said. The emails tell enough. After Carol left, Diane helped me pack until evening. We were almost done when my phone rang an unknown number. Miss Brown, a formal voice asked. This is Marcus from First National Bank. We're calling about the mortgage on 1542 Oak Street, my parents' address. They're 3 months behind. Marcus continued. As you've made previous payments, we wanted to inform you. I'm not involved with that property anymore, I cut in. You'll need to speak with the owners directly. After hanging up, I sat heavily on my couch. You okay? Diane asked. They're going to lose the house, I said. The house I paid off. The house they remortgaged for Eric. They're going to lose it. And how do you feel about that? Before I could answer, my doorbell rang again. This time it was Dad. You need to fix this, he said as soon as I opened the door. Eric's being destroyed. Your mother's sick with worry. The bank? No, I said simply. What? No. I don't need to fix this. I'm not going to fix this. I'm your father. Really? I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. Because when I paid off your mortgage, you were just the homeowner. When I asked about the new loan, you were just the decision maker. When I questioned Eric's fraud, you were just his defender. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. You want to talk about fair? How about stealing 5 years of my life and using it to fund Eric's lies? Was that fair? We're losing everything, he said quietly. No, I corrected him. You're losing what you gambled. There's a difference. Jean. Mom's voice called from their car parked on the street. Is she going to help? Dad looked at me one last time. Are you? I thought about the subpoena, the emails, the years of manipulation. No, I said. I'm not. He walked away without another word. I watched their car disappear down the street, then went back inside where Diane was pretending she hadn't heard everything. Last box, she said, holding up my nursing awards. Want these wrapped? I took the awards, feeling their weight achievements I'd earned while supporting a family that never supported me back. No, I said, placing them carefully in the box. I want them displayed in my new office in Boston, where they'll remind me daily that I'd finally chosen myself. Through careful maneuvering and a private investor friend of Diane's, I'd managed to buy my parents' defaulted mortgage debt through a shell company, KWC Estates LC. They didn't know it was me, not yet. But they would. Rent will increase to market rate. I instructed the property management company I'd hired. No exceptions, no delays. If they can't pay, start eviction proceedings. The current tenants, the manager hesitated. They're your family, right? No, I said firmly. They're tenants who made poor financial decisions. Treat them accordingly. That evening, Diane came over with wine and pizza. Your mom called me again, she said, pouring glasses. They got the new rental agreement today. She was crying. Let me guess they can't afford it? Eric's unemployment ran out. Your dad's pension barely covers utilities. She studied me. You're really going to make them pay market rate. Why shouldn't I? I took a sip of wine. They took my gift and turned it into Eric's gambling chip. Now they can pay what everyone else pays. My phone buzzed at Dad this time. The rent increase, he said when I answered. It's impossible. We can't. Market rate is market rate. I cut in. The new owners have been very clear. New owners? His voice sharpened. Who are they? We can't even get a name. Just some will see. That sounds frustrating, I said blandly. Like when someone makes major financial decisions without consulting others involved. A long pause then. It's you, isn't it? You bought the mortgage. TWC Estates LC bought the mortgage, I corrected. I suggest you direct any questions to the property manager. Damn it, Maggie. We're your family. No, I said quietly. You're tenants who are late on their first payment. I'd suggest fixing that before eviction proceedings begin. I hung up as Diane watched me with wide eyes. Ice cold, she said admiringly. Learn from the best. I reached for my laptop. Want to help me book flights to Boston? I have interviews next week. My phone buzzed again. Eric. Just saw the rental agreement. This is cruel. I typed back. Like using my credentials without permission? Like taking advantage of my sacrifices? That kind of cruel? I'm your brother. No, I replied. You're a basement tenant who's behind on rent. I blocked his number before he could respond. Later that night, I drove past the house one last time. Lights burned in every window, probably another family meeting about how to handle their cruel, ungrateful daughter. But I wasn't their daughter anymore. I wasn't their safety net, their ATM, their convenient solution to every problem. I was their landlord, and landlords didn't accept excuses instead of rent. My phone buzzed with an email from the property manager. Tenants requesting meeting to discuss payment plan. I replied with what Dad had once told me. No explanations needed. Market rate is market rate. Then I drove home to my half-packed house, to my boxes labeled Boston, to my future that had nothing to do with being anyone's savior. They taught me about property values. Now they could learn about paying the price. Epilogue of Boston last box, Diane announced, setting it down in my new Boston apartment. Though I still can't believe you only brought 8 boxes total. Clean breaks require light packing, I said, opening the window to let in the autumn breeze. The view of the Charles River made me smile, so different from my old street with its weight of memories. My phone buzzed the property manager back home. Your parents made partial rent, she reported. Still short $400. Standard procedure, then, I replied. Send the notice. Diane watched me hang up. You really aren't going to give them any breaks, are you? They never gave me any. My laptop pinged with an email notification, Carol Martin requesting a follow-up interview. Still no, I typed back. But thanks for asking. Coffee? Diane held up 2 mugs before her flight back home. We sat by the window, watching boats on the river, when my phone buzzed again. Eric had somehow gotten a new number. Please. Just $2,000 to stay afloat. Last time, I'll ask. I showed Diane the message. Want to bet? No bet, she laughed. He'll ask again next week. Not if I can help it. I blocked his new number. You know what's weird? Diane said after a moment. You don't seem happy about any of this. Not really, I considered her words, watching a sailboat cut through the water below. It doesn't feel triumphant, I admitted. It just feels fair. Fair enough to be worth it. My phone rang the property manager again. Your father's here in my office, she said, insisting on speaking to the owner. I sighed. Put him on. Maggie, Dad's voice was rough. We need to talk about this face to face. No, we don't. Your mother cries every night. Eric's talking about moving to his friend's couch. This house. It's all we have left. Had. I corrected. It's all you had left before you leveraged it for Eric's dreams instead of protecting it with mine. We were wrong, he said quietly. Is that what you want to hear? We were wrong. What I wanted to hear was that 5 years ago, when I handed you that check. What I wanted to hear was 3 months ago, when I discovered the truth. I paused. Now? Now I just want my rent on time. I hung up, turning to find Diane watching me with a strange expression. What? You really did it, she said. You really broke free. Free? I laughed. Is that what this feels like? Doesn't it? I walked to one of the boxes, pulling out my nursing awards. One by one, I placed them on the window sill where the morning sun would hit them. No, I said finally. It feels like learning. Like finally understanding what they taught me all along, which was that loyalty isn't servitude, that love isn't a blank check, that family. I placed the last award, adjusting it slightly. Family is what you do, not what you're born into. My phone buzzed one last time. Mom, we're having dinner tonight. Your empty chair. It hurts to look at. I typed back. Then maybe you finally understand how I felt watching you hand Eric everything I worked for. Then I turned off my phone. Help me unpack, I asked Diane before her flight. We worked in comfortable silence until she had to leave. At the door, she hugged me tight. You good? She asked. I thought about the property manager's reports, about Eric's desperate texts, about Mom's empty chair. I'm free, I said. Maybe that's better than good. After she left, I stood at my window watching the river flow. My phone lay silent on the counter, probably filling with more messages I wouldn't answer. In the distance, a hospital helicopter landed at Mass General, my new workplace, my new life, my new start. My laptop pinged with an email from the property manager. Rent notice delivered. Mr. Brown says to tell you we're still family. I typed 2 words in response. No explanations. Then I closed my laptop and unpacked my last box, my nursing school graduation photo. I'd kept it not for the memory, but for the reminder. That girl who smiled so hopefully had learned her lessons well, just not the ones they'd meant to teach. I placed the photo face down in a drawer. Some memories weren't meant to be displayed. Some lessons weren't meant to be forgotten. They taught me loyalty. I'd learned not to confuse it with servitude. And that more than revenge or justice or even freedom was worth every box I'd packed and every bridge I'd burned. That was the real inheritance they had given me. And unlike their house, it was one I'd keep forever.